The following podcast is exclusively sponsored by Prabhu Ventures, helping to improve awareness of disability, equality and diversity issues.
Hello, my name's John Perry. Welcome to Imagine. In this podcast, I'll be talking to a lady from St Helens who runs a project to support refugees and migrants.
My name's Debra Hill. I work for a small company called Olcott Wish, CIC, which stands for Our Little Corner of the World in St Helens. And as part of that, we run a project called Cafe Laziz, which is an Arabic community cafe where asylum seekers and refugees can volunteer, get training, qualifications and integrate with the local St Helens community.
That's great. Okay, now I've read up a little bit about the name, but can you explain to me a little bit about the name and what it means?
Yeah, so Olcott Wish is Our Little Corner of the World in St Helens, and that's the name that I came up with for the overarching company. But the students that I was working with, they weren't very impressed with that name at all, and they said it was too much of a mouthful. So for the cafe name, they came up with Cafe Laziz, which means delicious in Arabic.
Can you give me an idea of the sort of food that's on offer?
Yeah, at the moment we've only done vegetarian food. So it's foods based around vegetables, rice, bulgur, lentils, and it's all really healthy, all cooked on the premises in the morning.
Okay, and you've mentioned yourself, and I've also read up that the volunteers are given sort of training and skills, and that they can go and transfer into maybe employment or volunteering. So can you explain to me a little bit about how they get involved in the running of the cafe and what they're able to do?
Yeah, initially it was set up with a group of refugees that I already worked with. I have another job where I work for St Helens Council as an ESOL tutor, teaching English.
Come to that as well.
All right, teaching English as a second language.
Yeah.
So I met a lot of the refugees through there, and I set up a special kind of course. We had some extra funding from Liverpool City Region Combined Authority to set up some special classes that weren't just about English qualifications. So I did a class based around customer service, and from that we developed the idea of, well, actually these people need to get out from behind a desk. They need to not just learn grammar, because nobody in St Helens speaks with correct grammar anyway. So they can never be understood or understand the neighbour, so they need to be able to do something where they can speak to English people. And they were a million miles away from the job market, because a lot of these people have had their education disrupted. They've been in war-torn countries, so they've either had to leave school early if they were lucky enough to get to school. Some of them got to university but had to leave as soon as they started because of the war. And then they've been in limbo for 6 years waiting in another country to be able to be brought over to England. So it was a case of, what can we do? What skills do they have? And as I got to know them, it was clear to me that the hospitality skills and the cooking skills didn't need any training at all. So I thought, well, if we build on the skills that they've got, we'll open the cafe, which will give them the opportunity to speak English with English people. It's operating as an open cafe to the public. Yeah. So they're serving the public each week. So they're developing their English skills. I'm a trained ESOL tutor anyway, so I can help them along with that. Yeah. And then we decided then we needed to give them a bit more. So they've all now completed level 2 qualifications in food safety, level 2 allergen awareness, customer service, and they've just completed during lockdown, they managed to complete a management qualification.
Okay, that's brilliant. And so in your own way then, what kind of stimulated you to get involved initially?
I think it was just because I was getting very friendly with a lot of the families, because a lot of the families, well, all of the families don't have anybody else in St Helens. All of their families are still back in Syria or Lebanon or Turkey or wherever else they've been shipped out to. We were kind of like a support link for them, and we got very friendly with a lot of the families. And for me, as an English tutor, I didn't feel that we were giving them enough. We were giving them the qualifications that they need, but to go from having no English at all to be able to go and get a job is a massive leap. And they were getting very frustrated, because they were saying, I've been here 2 years, why can't I do this, why can't I do that? So we had to think of something, what could we do that would give them a more practical experience?
Okay, and so how do they come to you? How do you promote that people can come to you and be volunteers?
So I work with quite a few different voluntary groups, and I work with the resettlement officer. So anybody new coming into the country, either as an asylum seeker or a refugee, will get directed to ESOL classes if that's what they want, or the cafe or the cafe if that's what they want to do as well. So it's done mainly on a word of mouth basis.
Okay, can I ask you a little bit about the thoughts you've got around, because you mentioned migrants and refugees and, coming into the country, and it's all in the news at the moment, isn't it, about Afghanistan and so on and so forth. So have you got any thoughts about the general issues that refugees and migrants face?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me that I've come across with any of them is obviously the language, but I think a lot of the Afghans that will be coming through, and I could be wrong on this, but because they've worked alongside the military in Afghanistan or worked alongside the government, and that's why they're bringing them over, I'm assuming some of them will have quite good English skills anyway. I think the biggest problem they're going to have is the culture. I think it's going to be a massive, massive cultural shock. And they're already going to be in a state of trauma because they've had to leave the country in such a short space of time. They've not had time to process it, deal with it. If they've all come out of it as a family, then they've been very lucky, because obviously on the news people are getting split up, and so the trauma side of it is going to be huge for them, and then just to settle into the English and St Helens culture is just going to be so big for them.
Can I ask you a little bit about, because you talked about, it's customer facing, isn't it? And then they're coming into contact with the general public. We're all aware of different stereotypes and attitudes that are around at the moment. So have you experienced any of that in terms of the refugees and the customers and their attitudes and so on?
Not with the customers. We find that the customers that come in are there because they want to support refugees predominantly. Right. But we have on social media, obviously, and it doesn't come from things that Cafe Laziz posts. It comes from things like the St Helens Star or the Reporter are posting. And when they post something about refugees, migrants, asylum seekers, that's when you get the negative comments coming out. But I have found, since we've opened the cafe, the negative comments are being far outweighed by positive comments.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah. And the thought I had as well is if people are working, whether it be in a paid or voluntary capacity, it's showing the willingness to kind of have a go. Is that right? Or?
Absolutely, they're desperate to work. Even the asylum seekers are in a really tricky position because they're not allowed to work until they've been given refugee status, and that can take months or years in some cases. And I remember speaking to one at the beginning. He said, I don't want charity, I don't want people to be giving me my clothes, I don't want to wear a t-shirt that somebody's given me, I want to go out and buy my own t-shirts. They've worked in their own country, they're absolutely desperate to work, they want to raise their families, they want to be independent. And some of them now, they're at that point where they are getting jobs, and it may just be a delivery job, but they're getting jobs, they just want to be out there working.
Yeah, from my own experience and offering support, I've had a similar situation where I've helped a guy who's moved into the country into work, and to be honest with you, he created some of his own initiatives about looking for work and things, and I was just there to assist him and support him, and that to me was showing willingness. And we've got a couple of people like that on our own books, who we can see are really trying, and some of them have been successful and some of them haven't. So. What other aspects of the cafe and the work that you think you'd like to highlight? So, for example, you talked to me about teaching English as a second language. So, do you want to talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I work for St Helens Council as an ESOL tutor. I've done that for about 5 years now. We're very, very lucky in that the classes are small. We only have 8 in a group. The students get to come twice a week rather than the normal once a week. They work through the qualifications at the level that's right for them, so they work through the speaking and listening, the reading and the writing. Like I said, for me, I think the frustration is that they've got to pass these qualifications to show progress, and a piece of paper saying that you can write in a full sentence with the correct grammar isn't used in real life.
Because you also indicated, and I guess it's true of a lot of the population, isn't it, that some of us don't even have that skills anyway, whether we're from the country or not, so that's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest, even if we've been to university and got a degree in English and we know how to use it, we still don't use it when we're speaking, or potentially when we're writing a formal letter or a formal text we would use it, but in speaking we never use correct grammar.
Now, you may or may not be aware, but I've already done a podcast for the local authority, and we interviewed a girl called Maggie. I don't know if you've come across her, but she was of school age, but she was very eloquent and very articulate, and she wants to go on and become a doctor and things like that. So I was just wondering, you mentioned earlier on about some of the ambitions and the expectations. Do you get that from a lot of people that they actually want to just go out and do something and earn and learn? And
yeah, all of the refugees that have been brought over on the Vulnerable Person Resettlement Scheme all want to learn, and if they don't want to be in the class because they feel that they can't progress quickly enough, they've left to get a job. So they've been out and got a job, be that in Liverpool or in St Helens, but they've gone out and got a job. They're definitely ambitious. They've come from a country where they can just turn up to a friend who's building, they all build their own houses, so they turn up to a friend who's building something on the streets and just say, can I have a job? And yeah, you've got a job tomorrow. It's the bureaucracy in this country that makes it extremely difficult.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the bureaucracy then and explain to me some of the issues there?
Yeah, I think the main issue, the first one would be filling in forms. You can't get anywhere unless you fill in a form. You're not going to get an interview unless you fill in a form. Well, if you've never been to school in your country, but you've trained up as a pastry chef, for example, you're very talented, you've got lots and lots of skills, but you can't fill in that form because you can't read and write in your own language, let alone in another language. So you can't even have it interpreted or translated for you. You've got a block straight away that you can't apply for that job. Things like apprenticeships out here, there's a lot of students who I think would be really good at getting an apprenticeship because they want to work, they want to carry on training, they want to carry on improving their English. Apprenticeship would be ideal, but they've got to be able to do level 1 and level 2 English, so they've got to be able to write texts in paragraphs that, if they want to go and work in construction, how often are they going to use a text in a paragraph, Things like doctors, appointments, things that we all take for granted. If you want to see a doctor or you want to see somebody in the council office, you need to make an appointment, you need to turn up for that appointment on time. Job centre, for example, or you're not going to be seen. Back in Syria, these people, they didn't have appointments, they would turn up and sit in a line and wait their turn, and if their turn didn't come by the end of the day, they'd go back home and go back the next day, unless they could give somebody a little bit of money to get further forward in the queue. That's how it worked.
I alluded to Maggie before, and one of the things that she did was she kind of supported her mother, say at doctor's appointments or on kind of different events and things like that. Do you find that goes on generally, and that people who are more eloquent or have maybe got English as a second language, can kind of help each other? Or?
Yeah, they definitely do. They definitely help each other in their own little community. And they also do get the children to help out a lot as well. So the children now, if I brought a group of children here and some were from St Helens originally and some were from Syria originally, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference with the accents because the children are speaking with perfect St Helens accents now.
Well, funny enough, she was talking about, that one of the things she valued was being able to mix and integrate with other people and learning from other people. So is that your experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. The more they can mix, I think at the beginning, I think the one of the main reasons for setting the cafe up initially was they weren't integrated. So they were saying hello to the neighbour and the neighbour would say something back, and because they didn't understand it, they went back into the shell and got frightened and I can't say hello again because I'm not going to understand what my neighbour's saying back to me. So it makes them a lot more nervous and a lot more shy than they generally would be. It takes a lot of time to build up trust with them. So they need to be able to trust you to be able to... They don't want to feel stupid, and it's not that they're stupid, it's that they don't speak the language.
Okay. And, from your own personal professional point of view, going forward, what would you like to see happen in an ideal world, and indeed in a more immediate situation on a daily basis? What would you like to see happen?
In St Helens in particular, I would like to see... more integration. Even though I do feel it's got better and I think it's improving all the time, I still think there are pockets where you have families from different countries. And I was speaking to one yesterday, a new lady that I haven't spoken to before, and she's from the Gambia, and she said none of the children on her street will play with her little girl. And it's simply because of the difference in the skin colour. They're just so different, they just won't play with her. And I would like to get rid of that completely. One of the boys was telling me yesterday, he was speaking to his friend in Arabic, and some man was shouting at him in the town centre, telling him to stop, shut up. And they said, why, what have we done? They're 14-year-olds. and they said, you're in England, you need to speak in English. And I would just like them to be able to just understand, well, actually, these boys speak 2 languages fluently. And if I was in Spain and I met an English person, I would be speaking in English. I wouldn't automatically speak Spanish to an English person. Yeah. So it's a skill that they've got. It's not something that they should be frightened of or they should stop using. They all want to go back to the countries at some point. They're desperate to get back to the countries. And if they do and the children don't speak their language, what are they going to do then?
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so speaking about the social enterprise as a whole, have you got any thoughts about where you'd like to go with the cafe or any future projects or any ideas?
Yeah, we've just got some funding from Kindred, from Liverpool City region. So we've got some funding to start up a couple more projects, to be honest. So we want to keep Central Link Children's Centre going on a Thursday as the training cafe, so anybody new coming in can work on the Thursday, as we have done with the pilot that we did that worked really well. Get them all trained up, get them through the qualifications, get them the food safety and everything else that goes with that. And then we're now in the process of hopefully opening a new cafe at Derbyshire Hill Family Centre. Right. So we're looking at, it needs quite a lot of work doing to it, so we want to get in and we want a new kitchen in there, we want to do lots of decoration and things like that. So that's our next step. And then the current volunteers that we have, I'm hoping will manage that cafe. I'm hoping to take a step back from the day-to-day running of it and let them do it. Right. And then they can open it as many days as they want to. They don't need to rely on me being on a day off from my teaching job. Long term, I'd like more cafes around St Helens that more of them can take over and start running for themselves.
Okay, that would be brilliant. And that would provide, again, sort of self-employment or employment opportunities if they could do things for themselves as well. Yeah. You know, this issue you raised earlier on about, I think you were saying like migrants find it more difficult to kind of get settled here and things like that. Is there anything that you'd like to see happen there or anything that should be getting done there? Or?
I think this year we took part in Refugee Week for the first time as a borough. And it worked really, really well. And I would like that to be more spread out, really, and not just for Refugee Week, but more across the whole year. So do more events where we have more cultural events. One of the things I want to start doing when we do get into Derbyshire Hill is set up like cultural evenings where we may have, for example, if we pick a ticket out of hat and we get a man or a lady from Iraq, let's have an evening about Iraq. So we'll have Iraqi food, have them speaking about the culture, the country, things that they did in their country, just so that we can learn from them. Because just from me going around to the houses and speaking with them on an informal basis, I have learned so much that I would never learn from behind the opposite side of a desk.
Okay. I mean, I think there's a bit of reluctance on people's part, aren't there, to engage and get involved with people who they see as being different. Would you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, I think I would slightly. I think the media doesn't help, and I think I think there is still quite a lot of fear about. So I know people where I live are still frightened of people who wear the hijab, for example. Why do they wear that? They're making themselves stand out. Well, actually, it's their religion to wear that, and it's their culture to wear that.
I don't necessarily want to steer you in a particular direction that you don't want to go, but you mentioned the media there. So what would you like to see the media do? And indeed, you know, from a political point of view, what do you think should happen?
Yeah, I would like, at the moment, I think the politics, I tend to stay out of politics. I don't get involved in politics at all. But at the moment, I think it's really difficult not to have an opinion on it. And I think the things that the government are doing with the new strategies and policies is just soul destroying. I think they're just taking us absolutely backwards to rather than forwards with moving people into the country and helping people who need help. There's plenty of things the media say and put stories out there that have got a slant on it that it's just not the truth. And when you talk to people and you say, well, actually, this myth, I'll tell you about that, and you dispel it, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, no, because that's what the media are not. They're not portraying. They're portraying the bad side of everything all the time.
Okay, so I don't want to put words into your mouth, but you mentioned about myths there. So can you give me an illustration of a myth and how that can be challenged?
Yeah. So, for example, not long ago, the St Helens Star, I think it was the Star or the Reporter, it was one of the local newspapers, and they put a news story out about how many refugees we have in the borough. And straight away, a man came onto the post and he said, he put a meme of all the countries where there's a lot of war, with the word war across it, and then lots of arrows, and then all the European countries where there's no war, and then UK, and then across it they put benefits, and they just put that people were diverting the EU to get to the UK because they wanted the benefits. Well, these people who are coming as asylum seekers, and they're calling them illegal. Nobody who comes into the country seeking asylum is illegal. It doesn't exist. They might not have got here in the correct way by waiting for the Home Office, etc. But there's no other way to get into the country. We're an island, so there's no other way to get in apart from on a boat if you've got no money. Their lives are at risk. They're coming in, they're bypassing these countries. Well, actually, they're not. They go into countries where they still don't feel safe, and they're not made to feel welcome. They're coming where they've maybe got friends or family. And when they get here, they're not entitled to any benefits at all. So an asylum seeker comes, they get just over £5 a day, which has got to cover all the food, the travel. Well, a bus ticket in St Helens is £4.60, or it was the last time I used the bus. So that's if they go to an English class and or go to a doctor's appointment and get on the bus to go into town, that's the money for the day gone. So they've got no food for the day. So they're not entitled to these benefits that people think they're getting.
So I hear, and I'm sure you hear, they're coming over here, taking our houses, using our health service, taking our employment, all of that sort of stuff. How would you challenge that then?
Again, asylum seekers get housed in what I would consider the worst houses that we have generally in the country. They put them in the houses that nobody else wants to take, so they're the empty houses, the empty flats, apartments. They're not furnished. It's just a room of 4 walls. So if you could imagine losing all your family trying to travel to get out of a life-threatening situation, and nobody would do that. Nobody would leave all the family if their life wasn't in threat. Imagine that, and then coming having to sit in a room looking at the same 4 walls. Your mental health is just going to take a massive nosedive. They're not allowed to work until they've become a refugee. So they're not allowed to access English classes until they've been in the country for 6 months. Then they've got to obviously apply for the refugee status. That can take anything from months to years. And I do personally know people who have been appealing the system for years and years, and then they've got refugee status. So it's a weird system. And then
I can endorse that as well. I've seen that happen for myself as well. Yeah.
There's too many of them that it happens to. For it just to be bad luck on one person's behalf. The system isn't fit for what it's supposed to do. And to be honest, if people are coming here and accessing the healthcare, well, if my family were about to be killed for whatever reason that may be, and they had to move to another country in terrible circumstances, I would hope that somebody would help them with the healthcare.
Yeah. Okay. And this might sound a strange question, but if you had one big wish that you could see would happen, however big or small that is, what would it be?
I would like to be able to say we live in a town and a country, to be honest, where everybody accepts everybody for whoever they are, whether that's religion, race, culture, different countries, different way of upbringing, different anything. I just wish people would just live and let live and just accept each other as they are.
Thank you for allowing me to interview, and can I just ask you to give some contact details if people want to get in touch?
Yeah, so the Cafe Laziz email address is cafelaziz@hotmail.com, and we are on Facebook and Twitter. I think we're at Cafe Laziz on Facebook, and we are at Laziz Cafe on Twitter.
And okay, if people want to use the cafe, can you give me the idea of when it's open?
Yeah, we're literally just waiting now on the children's centres being able to reduce the restrictions of 6 per group. As soon as those restrictions drop, we'll be putting notices out all over Facebook and Twitter, and we'll probably go to the press and do an advert. To be honest, we'll probably do a nice big launch event, because we've had to postpone a couple of launch events and picnics that we've wanted to do with communities. So we've got a lot of things in the pipework that as soon as we get the green light, we'll be up and running.
Okay, well, good luck with everything, and I wish you well.
Thank you very much.